All right, so this is a hot swap talk, so be prepared for it to kind of go all over the place. So this is coding in the Mozart effect. My name is PJ. We already know that. I work at DevRelate. That's cool. I'm not going to go through that. A little bit about me. I've been coding for over 20 years. It is not always my main profession because I do a lot of DevRel stuff, but before that, I was a musician. Before that, I heavily studied music. I've produced albums, I've recorded albums, I've toured, I've done all of the music stuff that you think is really hot and sexy. And if you want to have a conversation about why being a musician is none of those things, I'm happy to do that after this talk. I do have to give you a little bit of a warning. I am extremely opinionated about music. If we are going to have a conversation about music, that is going to come up. I will get heated. If you want to talk about who the best rapper is and you want to talk about how it's Jay-Z, I will explain to you why you are wrong. You are entitled to your opinion, however, it is not correct. Not too serious on that, but we can talk about it. So what is music? So one part of this definition is laid out by a guy named Don Campbell in his book, The Mozart Effect. Don started to do research, and like any good scientist, he wanted to make sure that his conclusions were going to match with what he wanted to see. He wanted to see expected results. Don's main focus was to see how music affects the brain specifically. So a lot of times you see the idea of the Mozart effect get kicked around, and there's very specific reasons why it is called what it is called. Don's main idea was that music could heal. It's a little hippy-dippy, because he thought it would be better than modern medicine. This is in like the 60s, 70s, so bear with Don. He was a child of his time. He tried it out with Alzheimer's patients, and what he did was he thought he was seeing what he expected, which was an increase in cognitive function and memory based on specific pieces of music. For non-brain maladies, though, Don was a little surprised. So what did Don play his patients? It's right in the title, Mozart. The idea behind Don's work started with kind of the homeopathic intention. There's a great deal written about how music can heal. This is not an original or different idea. The focus on this talk, though, is not on trying to heal. I am not a doctor. I am somewhat of a scientist. I fancy myself a scientist. And I feel like after Laura's talk, I can call myself a citizen scientist. I do not have a PhD. I am not a doctor. But I'm much cooler than that. But what was found over time, not just with Don, but with research that happened after that, was that music can actually increase cognitive function. How it works is a little bit different than he expected. We're not curing diseases, but what we are doing is improving our cognition, which is something that we want to do. Our mental health is very important to us, right? So, Don based his research on testing. See, testing is not just for devs. That he performed with Dr. F.H. Rauscher, and I always read that right off the slide because I'm pretty sure I'm always saying it wrong. And they started in the 60s and 70s making a lot of posits and actually working with mice in 1993, then chimps, and then humans, and see if they could actually perform tasks with better spatial reasoning. Do we know what spatial reasoning is? Okay, so spatial reasoning is understanding that I am about 2 meters from this guy in the yellow shirt, more or less, maybe closer to 3 meters. But I understand that means 4 meters, okay. So I'm not that great. I didn't listen to any tunes this morning. I did not play football. I played baseball. Yeah. So I know that, though. He's that close. The guy with the camera is a lot further away. That's spatial reasoning, understanding where things are in relation to oneself. There's a lot more to spatial reasoning than that, but that's where it began. So they realized that if they played a specific piece by Mozart, the spatial IQ score of the test subject would increase over time, as opposed to simply giving someone the test instructions or giving them the test with no instructions and utter silence. Just like that. Can you imagine being put in front of a test or a piece of code? No one explains to you how to do it. They just put it in front of you and walk away. No instructions. That's it. You're in a soundproof room. What are you going to do? You don't even really know what you're supposed to do. So, of course, there's a little bit of control there. So, the research results were based on Mozart's piece. It was piece like F99-6 or something like that. It's a very brief piece. If I played it for you, you would all recognize it immediately. But the problem was they were focusing on the wide breadth of the test subjects, giving them music or instructions or silence. But they all gave them the same piece of music. And what they found was what they were actually gaining was specific cognitive boosts that only lasted temporarily. So the things that I'm going to tell you about are temporary cognitive boosts. You cannot go home and listen to a piece by Mozart and be like, I am now a genius. I am going to solve every problem I'm ever going to see. But what we found is actually a lot of people actually listen to music while they code. I listen to music all the time. I have an issue. I don't know if it's an issue, but it's called, and I don't know how to say it, synesthesia. How many people know what synesthesia is? So what this means is when you hear music or sounds, you also see colors or have other things that are attributed, you get smells. So going to a concert for me is super exciting. Like, you might go and listen to this great band and you see lots of lights flashing all over the place. I'm getting a very different experience. I don't need the drugs. I don't need them. But all joking aside. So that's why I got so interested in this subject. So the interesting thing to me is you can actually persist that IQ boost, that cognitive boost over time by picking the right pieces. So let me put this in English. Music is a stimulator. We all know that it can evoke emotions. We know how it makes you feel, but it can also move your brain in specific directions, especially when you're like in a sluggish slump or you're stuck on a piece of code. Like a lot of people are like, oh, sometimes when I code, I go and take a walk. Well, a lot of times when I take a walk, I grab my headphones and I take a walk with my headphones. I actually can't function without my headphones on most of the time. I have music playing in my head constantly. There are songs playing in my head right now, and it's terrible because I don't get a choice. It just picks it. It's like having a broken iPod that you can't get rid of, and it never goes down on charge. But the idea here is like we all can relate to music. Everybody knows the first song they listen to after their first breakup. And even though that song might be a terrible emo song from the mid-'90s, if you listen to it now, you're like, oh, man, feels sad. But what you don't know is your brain is like, hey, there's something specific going on here. Let me push you forward so you could better understand your situation as it relates to what you are bringing in through your ears. That's how the Mozart effect works, essentially. I have very much broken that down to a very simple level that we can all understand. When it came to 1993 and Rauscher and all of his colleagues, they made the surprising claim that specifically, and I got the numbers wrong, it was Mozart's sonata for 2 pianos, K448, for a specific duration of 10 minutes. And what they found was their test subjects were originally, due to Don Campbell's research, Alzheimer's patients, people with brain maladies. But they had to have a control group, and for the control group, they used regular old people. They found whoever they could. What's that? Muggles, if you will. Yes, they found muggles who did not have Alzheimer's, and they said, let's listen. And they were like, wait a minute, we're getting the same boost. We're getting the same thing. Why is that? Well, the only signifying factor is K448. It must be Mozart. Mozart is the answer. We've solved everyone's problems. Thank you. Good night. Not quite. What they really just found was that music can move people in different ways. Harmonic music generally reduces dissonance in your brain. It can establish more focus. Instrumental music can allow a listener to kind of perform better. So why do all this? So at the heart, as coders, like, we really like doing things and we like translating things into mathematics. And the interesting thing about that is music is essentially mathematics expressed in a different way. If you are a classically trained musician, I am not. I play by ear. I play several different instruments, and I've never learned any of them. But if you're a classically trained musician, you can look and see how many numbers are involved. Not just the time signature. We all know the time signature. Oh, this is 4/4. Okay, cool. And then it's like, cool. How many people have seen the movie Whiplash? First of all, everybody should see that movie. It's sweet. It is, trigger warning, super disturbing in some ways. But they make references. They're like, all right, bar 128, go. 1, 2, 3, 4. And all of these musicians just pick up their instruments and play, because they understand through the numbers how the music works. We as coders essentially are doing mathematics. It's abstracted. It's abstracted away. You don't need to be a mathematician to be a coder anymore. But it is in its essence, we are teaching computers to do the math that they know how to do. We're just using words and they translate it to binary. There's a lot of levels of abstraction in between, but it is math. We love math. Computers love math. Music loves math. We're kind of bringing it all together. So developers, mathematicians, scientists of every shape and size were not even an afterthought for Rauscher and Campbell and their team of researchers. They were not thinking about us. They wanted to focus on epilepsy, Alzheimer's, ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease, and other maladies of the brain. Once they started testing on a control group, though, they started to see that people without brain issues found it just as stimulating as everyone else. But why? Was it this? How can we figure that out? So like good science, other scientists came in and said, all right, Rauscher and Campbell, let's take a look at what you did. Folks at Harvard and Oxford started to break it down. What do you think they found out? It wasn't Mozart. They started, there's hope for Joan Jett. Now I wish I had a Joan Jett slide, damn. It was about the emotional connection to the music. This is how, like, if you see people with brain maladies when they're getting music therapy, they often go through to select a song from their youth or something else that will evoke an emotion, that will trigger their brain to start remembering. They'll associate it with things. A lot of us saw that commercial, I think it was like in the run-up to the Super Bowl. I think it was the Amazon Alexa had a commercial where it was a couple dancing, and they said, play our favorite song. One of those people, the wife in that couple, has Alzheimer's. He continues to bring her memories back by playing that song. It's a nice touch, and then they sold things. That made it all weird, but the idea was it's the song that matters. It's the connection to the song that matters, not the song itself. So doesn't that kind of mean, like, essentially, couldn't we just call it the Bieber Effect? I mean, look at him. Look at him. I wish I had that hair. I wish I had any hair. But it's not untrue that if you have an emotional connection to a Justin Bieber or a Taylor Swift song, you might actually get some kind of cognitive boost from that. If you toss on Taylor Swift's Red album while you're coding, you might be like, all right, I'm about to jam this out. I've got 38 minutes worth of, I don't know what Taylor Swift sings about. Like, she breaks up with a lot of people, I guess. I don't really know. It's not my thing. She's not good. She doesn't write her own music. But if that's your connection, then it could work for you. So let's talk a little bit about that. It's not really what's in the music, it's what's in our brains. The brain response to the senses, sight, taste, feeling, smelling, hearing, sound, for those of us who can hear and hear properly, that's one of our most powerful things. Sound can provoke emotions in us, even if you're not a synesthete like myself. It will provoke things within you to generate memories. Even if it's just like, oh man, I remember the first time I heard Little Lion Man by Mumford & Sons. I was pulling up in my minivan in front of my house, and my son, who's now 21, was in the back seat, and he's like, Dad, I like this song. And I'll remember that forever. That's the emotional connection I have with that song. It's coincidental, but it's always there. I can picture it in my head. I was like, yeah, my son gets good music. We don't have to feed him crap music like a lot of parents do. We're good parents. But while working with deaf students, it was found that a similar effect could be achieved using smell or sight. So they don't have their hearing, but there's other cognitive boosts that they can get without that sense. So there's benefits there. Pleasant smell, baking bread, making pastries, things that are visually stimulating, great works of art, brilliant video montages, or even music that is loud enough that they can feel it. They've found can evoke similar cognitive things even in people who can't hear. We're lucky. I'm pretty sure everybody here can hear. But it doesn't mean if you can't hear that you're completely knocked out of the game. So you've heard of things like lumosity and stuff like that, and you're like, oh, focus on your mental elasticity and cognitive improvement tools. Incorporating music is kind of the same concept. It's a little bit more based in science. Lumosity is more on selling you the idea that you have this concept of mental elasticity, which you do, but not the way they think you do. It starts by seeing the short-term jumps. Over time, you can increase and see more long-lasting cognitive benefits. Technically, there's reason to believe you might even be able to see permanent results by focusing on different ways to make your mind more elastic. This also actually works with being more open-minded. Having new experiences expands your mind and keeps you flowing. It keeps you young, as they say. Being a coder is actually a lot less about the physical and more about the mental. While the visible portion of what we do every day is like pounding a keyboard, being stimulated visually by what's on the screen, all that stuff, the majority of what we do is actually cerebral. This is part of the reason why I do the work with OSMI. We have no problem being like, yo, my monitor is broken, it doesn't work, can I get a new one? Yo, my keyboard doesn't work, for some reason the escape key doesn't work because I got one of these MacBooks with a stupid bar on top. Can I get a new one? Nobody goes, hey, so I have ADHD, my brain doesn't work, can I get a new one? First of all, no, you can't. That is illegal and highly unethical. But what you can do is talk to a counselor, and what they might suggest is music therapy. Music therapy actually helps a lot with ADHD patients. The reason why is because music allows you to bear down and focus. It's important to keep in mind that when you start out, this cognitive boost is not going to be permanent. If that was the case, I've listened to enough music in my life to be one of the most intelligent people on the planet. Like I said, I listen to music nearly constantly. If I could, like, I listen to music when I sleep, I listen to music when I'm awake. If I could have headphones in right now, I would. I don't know, this is a thing that happened during the pandemic, but you have a lot of Zoom meetings. You generally take those Zoom meetings with headphones. If you don't, everybody can hear everything that's going on in your house. It's a terrible idea. Please use headphones. I play music while I'm in meetings. It helps me focus. Just keep it on light in the background. It doesn't have to be pounding and loud. Light in the background, and it's coming through my headphones, so no one has to know. Now the folks from Scout are like, wait a minute, every meeting we've been in, you've been listening to some shit? Like, yeah, sorry. But that's the way it goes. It helps me to focus. It helps me to work. So the effect of music on your performance as a coder at the beginning will be short-lived. Not in the sense that you'll become like Charlie from Flowers. Remember Flowers for Algernon? I think we all had to read it in high school. Where he like got this super cognitive, this guy who is like, has serious disability, took like a pill and he got super brilliant for a while and then it went away. Like, it won't take you away. You'll just kind of have like a little wave. You'll start here, you'll go up, you'll come back to where here was when you started. That's how a cognitive boost works. It lasts longer the longer you actually work with this. There's nothing to say that this isn't good, but the efficacy here is really the quality of code that you output will actually improve over time. Coding empathetically is good. So the question is, what's the right music? And this is where it starts to get a bit complicated, and I'm going to get a little bit opinionated. It starts with your preference. If you were raised in a certain culture, even if it was here in the United States, your parents, your caretakers, your geographic location, all of these things have an influence on the music that you listen to. Whether that's a reactive influence or it's a positive influence is totally up to you. There's a type of music that was played at your house. There's a type of music that your grandparents played. There's a type of music that you heard when you went to the supermarket. This all influenced what you listen to today. The ability to unlock the better cognitive function starts in being able to identify that music. So for me, it was kind of easy. I was a musician. I could first look at the things that I've been playing for most of my life, which is punk rock and emo and general rock, alternative rock music. I know that's my wheelhouse. Like, I could sit down, I could play, somebody hand me a guitar, I could play that stuff right now on stage. So it wasn't that hard for me, but for some people it's a little more difficult. Some people don't even know that they like types of music just because they've never been exposed to them. So how do we find what we like? And how do we find what works? So you start with what floats your boat. I'll use an example. Andrew right here, since you're so participant, what kind of music do you like? Mostly jazz. Jazz is super, thank you. Andrew's not a plant, but let's hear it for Andrew for being a great participant. So jazz is easy because jazz starts off right away. You need instrumental music is very helpful with this cognitive boost because there's no words to distract you. When there's words, you want to sing along, you want to do things. That could happen in jazz. Sometimes you start tapping or start pretending you can play a trumpet, and you're like, "Bah, bah," and you're like, I'm Charlie Parker. You're not Charlie Parker. Nobody's Charlie Parker. But Charlie Parker is actually something that I listen to quite a lot, especially his album Cha-Cha, which was stunning because it's all instrumental. There's a little bit of talking in the background because back then there was like one microphone in a room. But I can churn out code like there's no tomorrow to that album. I see a slowdown if I switch to Miles Davis's Something Blue because it's a much more mellow album. But Charlie Parker was like, man, back at the Cha-Cha days, he was rocking it out. Let's say you're more into like, the Grateful Dead or Fish. Sorry. You shouldn't be. But why not? There's a great instrumental band called Tea Leaf Green out of Chicago. And it's a jam band, just like Fish or the Grateful Dead, but they're all instrumental. So you can see the cognitive boost from that. Let's say you really like metal, and I know a lot of people are like, metal, instrumentals? That's crazy. Can't I just listen to the solos? No, because you'll be doing this. Your fingers are very far away from the keyboard. But there's this great band, especially if you like super anthemic metal. There's a band called Caspian. They're absolutely amazing. And every time you listen to them, you feel like you can totally take on the world. So there's an instrumental option. Once you figure that out, you start to break out of that. You start to look for more boats. So Andrew likes jazz. He listens to Charlie Parker a bit. Well, maybe you can start drifting into blues a little bit. Maybe get out of the bebop phase and listen to, I'm going to say it, listen to Kenny G, who kind of rocks that saxophone. Listen to different things. They're all going to benefit you. And the more that you bring into that, the more playlists you put together, the more things that you build, the longer you see that cognitive boost for. You can go for hours and see a 9 to 10 point cognitive boost in the work that you're doing. Granted, I don't think anybody's going to sit there with an EKG and be like, clearly PJ was right. But trust me, it's happening. Another personal example. This one comes out of breaking out of the mold. My younger brother, who is a hip-hop artist, used to be. He now works for the post office, which happens to a lot of hip-hop artists that don't make it. But he said to me once, he's like, you know what? You can say any kind of music, any genre of music you want. I guarantee you like a song in that genre. And I was like, oh yeah? Country. He looked me dead in the eye, didn't even take a breath, and said, Kenny Rogers the Gambler. And I was like, you son of a bitch. He's right. Love that song. Who doesn't love that song? Chances are there's some song, some piece of music in every genre that you will enjoy, that you can then incorporate into what you're doing and see that cognitive benefit. In his South by Southwest keynote a few years ago, Bruce Springsteen, the boss, I work for him, specifically addressed the issue of genre. Sometimes this is a problem, he opined. We get too caught up in what's right and we stop paying attention to what sounds good, what makes us feel good. And I'd add that when we feel good, we work better. So don't get too stuck on this. Focus on different kinds of music. It's important, while we're seeing what proverbially floats our boat and what might, to be careful of the placebo effect. Works kind of like this. You like the music you're listening to. It seems to be effective. You are reluctant to branch out. You're reluctant to check out other music. You stop to see that boost. You feel like I'm feeling sluggish and I'm not doing what I thought I was going to do. This isn't working the way PJ said. PJ said this would work. PJ lies. We should kill PJ. So don't get to that point. Get to a few points of that. This is when finding new music is like a key part, and there's lots of different ways to do that. Just like working on any one project over time can cause stagnation. If you've just been working on that authentication piece for 3 weeks, you're like, I hate authentication. I don't care if anyone authenticates anywhere. Security is a joke. I'm going to stop my job. And you get mentally constipated. Listening to the same music can cause the same thing. You can't just listen to the same 4 albums over and over again. Take time when working on less sensitive projects especially to explore different kinds of music and reach out there to see what's going on. This has changed. This is part of the landscape that's changed. So for those of us who are probably a little bit older, one of the things that we used to do is like we'd go to a friend's house and they'd have albums or they'd have tapes or CDs and they'd be like, yo, you got to check this out. But our music tastes have become so personal. You pop a pair of earbuds in and no one ever really knows what you're doing. And even though Spotify has like a social aspect where they'd be like, oh, Andrew's listening to Charlie Parker right now. I'm sorry to pick on you when you're going out of the room, Andrew. I could be like, oh, maybe I'll listen to Charlie Parker. Like, I'm not really paying attention to that when I'm focusing on writing my code. So you have to find other ways. There's cool collaborative ways, like Plug.dj is a European thing where you can actually go in. I think it attaches to SoundCloud, Spotify, and YouTube, and you actually take turns DJing for each other. I've done this at several jobs. It's great. Like, you sit there, you have an opportunity to chat, everybody's doing things, and you can just listen to the music and get new music and be like, oh, what is that jam? Oh, I can look and see. Like, this is amazing. Oh, I didn't know that my buddy Tyler was really into odd Canadian, Southern Ontario alternative rock music from the early and late 1990s. Sorry, Tyler, I know you're not here, but that's true. Pandora is a seriously great way to do this. Pandora, you just put it in, pay for it. Pay a couple bucks for whatever Pandora is to get rid of the ads and just let that flow. My wife and I, when we were getting ready for this trip, we were cleaning the house, and I just went in and I was like, you know what we want to listen to? The Jam and Elvis Costello. I put it in Pandora, put it on the speakers all over the house. We got the house clean in like an hour. I don't live in a very big house. But like it got us stimulated, it got us moving, and we just wanted to keep going. That's a great one. Also, and this is like somewhat controversial because I'm super opinionated in this space, but Reddit. Maybe not our music, because those people are weird, but if you look at things like R Listen to This, R Listen to Me, you can learn about all kinds of bands and artists that are coming up that maybe don't get the exposure of a Taylor Swift or a Justin Bieber or a Mozart, because Mozart was pretty much just like those people. He did have awesome hair. But you get the opportunity to see what other people are listening to. You can incorporate that into the things you're doing and see that cognitive boost. What else? There's also musicforprogramming.com. The first time I ever did this talk was a few years ago, and this guy got really into it. And he was like, I'm going to build this site. And he has like a whole list of songs. It's like, some of it's techno, some of it's different genres, but you can get into it and see what's going on. It's all instrumental. And I think it's still around unless he had some kind of lapse on his URL. But check it out. It's a new way to check out music. I will say this. Safety first. This is a small PSA. How many of you use AirPods? How many of you use earbuds, wired earbuds? How many of you use some other in-ear thing? Yeah, don't. That is really bad for you. You are generally piping heavy bass, because that's the way they build these things now, heavy bass directly into your eardrums. It is super damaging, and you will get a thing called tinnitus. Who knows what tinnitus is? How many of you are listening to that right now? Yeah, don't play the drums without earplugs, kids. That's my PSA. Over the ear, sometimes they're referred to as cans. Over the ear earphones are much better for you. They have better sound. Their microphones aren't as great as AirPods or anything like that, but they are much safer for you. They will not damage your ear as much. You will not find that you have intense wax buildup after a certain period of time because they are not in your ear. You are not doing anything invasive to your body. Be safe. Keep your music at levels that you can handle. Test that out. Start at about half. Do not listen to music extremely loud. You will damage your hearing, and it is a very bad situation. I would also recommend studio quality headphones if you can afford it. Avoid things like skull candy. They are there to look good and not be good. Avoid Beats by Dre. Sorry, Dre, it's not your day. They are super, super bassy and giving you low tones that you can't even hear that are destroying your hearing. Focus on studio quality headphones from Sony, Sennheiser. I don't work for those companies, but I personally use Urban Ears. Urban Ears are my favorite kind of over-the-ear headphones. They kind of look like the ones that you had back in school when they would test your hearing. You'd be like, yes, I hear that. Yep. That's what they look like. Who cares how good it looks? Protect your hearing. So, end of PSA. Some folks will also worry about like sitting and coding with headphones on or with blasting music, and it's something that will like put off interacting with other folks. This is more of an issue when we worked in offices. This might partially be true. People might approach you when you have headphones on and not want to talk to you. But it's also true that we're most productive in non-pairing situations when we are heads down and not interacting in the first place. When you're pairing, don't wear headphones. That's not cool. Your pairing partner doesn't appreciate it. But if you are in an in-office setting and you have your headphones on for head-down work, that is okay. Just make it clear to people that you're interruptible if you are, and if you are not interruptible, you should also be letting them know that anyway. While the RIAA is not really cool with it, share. I'm not advocating piracy here. But if you have different ways to share music, share music. Whatever streaming service you use, Spotify, Apple Music, Tidal, any of them, they all have the opportunity to share. And I know because I actually have a Twitter account called PJ's Album of the Day. I don't do it every day, and it's not always an album, but that was as close as I could get to what I was trying to do. And they all have the option to share. There's also a great thing called Combine.fm that you can drop the URL from your streaming service, and it will add all of the other sharing services so people can see what you're listening to. What else? Make a mixtape. You want to share what you're listening to? Make a playlist that you can share with other people so they can see. How many people have actually physically made a mixtape? That was a DL check on how many people are of a certain age. I love mixtapes. I always loved because you know what? You built them back in the day to be like, this is how I feel about you. This is how I feel we relate. Like we are cool because we all like this music. And I also like this other music that's also on there. You should check it out. It builds a community around the music you're doing, just like the community we have in tech. So share things out. It's kind of like open sourcing your music library, which you can't technically do. You should also take a break. Take a chance. Pick up an instrument, even if you don't know how to play it. Make stupid pictures and put them on the internet. There are so many people that are actually musicians as well as being coders. Play music. Do it yourself. Build things out. Figure out what's going on. Help with the math and coding skills that you have. Bring kids in. This is me playing with the original RailsConf band. They just were like, hey, we're going to put a band together. Do you play drums? And I was like, yes. All right, cool, let's do it. Do it with code. This is the controversial part. You ready? There are so many great JavaScript libraries for making music that you can actually code in terminal, code in your IDE, push it, and it will change the way the music is working. There are performances of this online. I highly recommend it. This isn't going to happen overnight. Figuring out what music works for you is going to take a while. There's nothing that's perfect for everyone. There is no catch-all answer. You will need to explore some things to unlock your ability and to code better. Once you find the right groove, stay in it and then move to the other one. Share with what you're doing. These are some of the resources that I used. The point here is we all want to be better coders. In order to be better coders, we have to have better brains. In order to have better brains, we have to find ways to do that. Music is one of the easiest ways to unlock your cognitive power and be more consistently a better person, a better coder, and build a better community. And with that, thank you very much.